All right. I'm so happy to finally meet you, Chloe. I've been watching and following you. I feel bad that I was already in post-production of the Detransition Diaries because I would have loved to have interviewed you for that film. But since you've given me permission to interview you now and I can hear your story, I can still put it in the book. So that's great. So let's just dig in. Like I said, I don't want to take all your time. And I know your story, but a lot of people watching won't know. And unfortunately, because the way the media is, a lot of your story just gets put into like hand-picked, cherry-picked little sound bites. So why don't you just start by telling us your story, starting with when you were a little girl, and when did you feel like you were born in the wrong body, or whatever you felt?
Yeah, so when I was little, actually, I was a pretty feminine girl, all things considered. I mean, I was a bit of a tomboy. I had some tomboyish tendencies, but for the most part, I was pretty girly. But as I got older and, as I started to like hit puberty and I started using social media, I started using the internet, I kind of started to become conscious of, just being a girl and like what becoming a woman might mean. And
was this when
I
you
mean,
were
a lot of
was this like around 13?
around 10, I hit puberty at around 9.
Oh,
A little early.
okay.
Although I guess by today's standards, that's pretty standard. But I started using social media at around 11 years old, and I was just exposed to a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have been. That includes not only like LGBTQ and especially like TQ content, but I also would see a lot of girls my age just like complaining about like things like a lot of the content I would see other girls and women post would kind of just be like devaluing the female experience as a whole, like just complaining about like how bad periods are, how bad like giving birth or like being a mom is, never like talking about
What were
the
the
things to
sites
value about it.
Did you have particular sites that you spent time on? Like in the Detransition Diary, like two of the girls mentioned Tumblr. I spent a lot of time on Tumblr.
I mean, I didn't use Tumblr a whole lot, but I did use Instagram for the most part. And I was active in communities where there was a lot of Tumblr influence.
Yeah. And did your parents know, or was this all in your bedroom and nobody knew what you were doing for hours and hours?
Yeah, nobody was really. My internet access was pretty much unrestricted. Nobody really checked up on me at all.
Yeah.
Or nobody really kept track of what I was doing on my phone.
Yeah. And what did you think about that? Was that like something, if you ever were a mom's one day, be more?
Yeah, when I was younger, I thought it was nice having the privacy, but that's when I have kids in the future, I'm not doing that. I'm definitely gonna keep my kids off of technology and social media for as long as possible. And once they're old enough to use it, I'll be monitoring their usage and trying to keep them busy with other things because the internet is not great.
Brothers and sisters in your family, and were they kind of watching you and seeing you sort of change?
So I have all older siblings. They're all about 7 to 8 years older than me. And by this point, they all pretty much had moved out. And so there's nobody really looking out for me.
You're almost like an only child then at that point.
Yeah.
And did you have both of your parents at home with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of on your own. You've got all this really cool privacy, spending way too much time looking at stuff you probably shouldn't be looking. And then how quickly did that kind of get you sucked into? Did you actually think I'm trans or I'm born in the wrong body? Or did you kind of go the non-binary, gender fluid path?
Yeah. So I don't know why, but the algorithm on Instagram specifically would always recommend me like content of like trans identified teens and especially females, trans boys as they're called.
Yeah.
And it kind of just like, in a way, it just kind of spoke to me, because they seem to have like this really tight sense of community amongst themselves, and like also their followers.
Mhm.
And I was always kind of like an awkward kid. I kind of struggled socially, and especially with connecting to my female peers. And as I was getting older, I started developing more like tomboyish tendencies and relating more to the boys my age. And
And about how old were you at that time?
I was 11 or 12.
So still very young, really.
Hmm.
Yeah. And did you like change your name, change your pronouns, start dressing more masculine, even though you kind of were a feminine girl?
Yeah. So I at first I didn't really come out to anybody. I just came out to like my older sister, maybe a friend or two. And then maybe a few months after I started changing my presentation, like getting shorter haircuts, secretly like buying more masculine clothes, I came out to my parents in a letter asking them to
How old were you when
start
you were
referring. I was 12.
12? Wow. And what was the gist of your letter? Hey, mom and dad, guess what?
Yeah,
Or
it was basically like I want you guys to like start seeing me as your son, and refer to me as with a new name. That was pretty much the gist of it.
and did you like just leave it on the table and go to bed, or did you sit there while they opened it and read it?
I kind of just left it there. I was kind of shy about it. I wasn't really sure about how they're going to react to it. So
Yeah. And how did they react to it?
um I mean, they were pretty supportive. They didn't exactly know what to do. So their response was to, because it wasn't like it was such a novel thing to them. They wanted to take me to a therapist to like get this sorted out, both for me and themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
and from there, it was basically just like constant affirmation from the the therapist and all the doctors who were involved, and they kind of coerced my parents into doing the same thing, basically.
wow. So you didn't get like a second opinion. You just showed up and they kind of just started affirming you right away. Not
Hmm.
like they didn't investigate, why do you want to do this, or just
Mm-mm.
nothing. Wow.
There's not
And
any real investigation.
like how
I did
many?
I did get a diagnosis for gender dysphoria, but I don't. It just wasn't to the process isn't really that.
Yeah.
It's not thorough enough.
And are you still 12 at this time when you're seeing the therapist and being affirmed?
Yeah, but pretty soon after I turned 13.
And then did you go on testosterone?
Yeah, I got referred through a gender specialist,
Mhm.
they call it, to an endocrinologist. The first one I saw actually was pretty much the only doctor who expressed any concern about this. He didn't let me go on blockers or testosterone because he said, like, he was concerned for how it might affect my brain development.
Mhm.
But it was very easy to just quickly afterward see another endocrinologist would be who would let me go on to become medicated.
Wow. And did you go on injectable testosterone?
Yes, I did.
And did you give yourself your own shots? You have one of your parents give them to you, or?
Yeah, I had,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say that must be kind of a little bit harder for a young girl to start sticking.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
yeah, it was. I
wow.
couldn't really. I was always told, well, you're gonna have to start doing this on your own. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not too, I'm not too, I don't like needles all that much. I don't think anybody does.
And I've
But
seen the needles. It's an impressive needle. It's not just like a little tiny, needle.
oh no, it was a pretty small needle actually, but
Oh, did you take
sometimes it
them in
was
your
still
stomach then versus in your thigh?
no, I took them in my arm.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It
And
became more difficult over the years as like I developed more muscle and like started to like lose some fat in the area.
that makes sense.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it would sometimes like poke like a nerve or like a blood vessel or something, and it would be pretty painful. But
Yeah.
before I started on the testosterone, actually, I had been on puberty blockers. There was like, about a month long period between starting the two.
Oh, so even though you had already started puberty, they still put you on the puberty blockers. Got it. And
Mhm.
were you on Lupron?
Yeah, I was on Lupron. I
Yeah.
was 13 years old by this point, so it had been about 4 years after I started puberty.
Got it. Got it. So, how long total were you on Lupron?
I would say maybe about a year to a year and a half.
Okay. And then how long were you on testosterone?
About 3 years.
So, and did you see immediate changes? And what can you tell me, like, what were those immediate changes that you saw in your body?
Yeah, so I think the most immediate change I could think of would be the voice dropping.
Mhm.
It's that was the quickest change to come about, and then the emotional effects. Um, like I had more energy. I mean, to be fair, I had been on blockers for about a month, and during that period, like just not having like new sex hormones in my body like caused me to feel like really bored, kind of depressed, and I was very tired a lot of the time. It made it difficult to like focus on my schoolwork actually. But I had like more energy. I was a little more. It almost had kind of like stimulant like effects, and I had an increase in libido, obviously, because it's testosterone.
Yeah.
It's a sex hormone. It's a powerful one at that.
Did you have
That
any like
was
temper issues? Like in the film, Helena talks about, I mean, she just got like angry. She wanted to like break things.
yeah. I found that as time went on and like as my dose increased, I was more prone to that. I think that happens. Usually, that would happen like when I was like nearing the end of the cycle, because I would have to I would have to get shots about once a week
Yeah.
on a certain day of the week, and like towards the end of that week I found that I would be more prone to like getting angry or more emotional.
Hmm. And did you start getting
So
facial
it
hair?
kind of that was kind of an incentive to stay on it,
Yeah.
to keep doing it so I could like regulate myself.
Yeah. And did you start growing facial hair? Did you get more muscle definition?
Yeah, so I started to grow more muscle, and I got more facial hair. Luckily my genes didn't allow for like a full on like beard and mustache, but I did end up having to get laser
Yeah. What is your
after I
heritage?
detransitioned.
What is your heritage, if I can ask?
Um, I'd like to
Oh,
keep
sure,
that
sure.
private actually.
But it's the genes are, you're not a hairy kind of person, is what you're saying.
Mm.
By genes, got it.
But
Yeah, I get that.
it's actually given me some permanent effects. Like I was still developing while I was on it, so I mean I've always kind of had like a like larger shoulders, but now they're a little bit larger than they were before, and that's all in the bone. And I have like my nose, my forehead, my jaw are all more pronounced as a result of that, and the changes to bone structure are pretty much permanent. So
And during this time, when you looked in the mirror, did you kind of like what you saw? Did you go, well, that's yeah.
oh
So
yes, I did. I like
so
the changes that
that
I
was
saw.
affirming that you had made the right decision. You were on the right path, and
Hmm.
your parents were like, Chloe's happy. This is what
Hmm.
she wants. Everything's good. And then, at what point did you decide you wanted to go further and have surgery? How old were you when that came about?
I would say I was about, yeah, I was about 15 when I started seeking a double mastectomy, or as they call it, top surgery.
Yeah.
Um, I was about 2 years on testosterone by this point, and I'd been binding for 2 years. You're familiar with what binding is, right?
Yes, yes, but tell the
It's
audience
yeah,
because they might
yeah.
not know.
So for those of you who don't know, it's a binder is a device. It's sort of like a sports bra, except it's more like it covers more of the body. Either like they come in either like half body or like a full body. But it basically they're basically for the purpose of flattening the breasts against the rib cage to create a more masculine, a more flat chested look. But so it's a compression device, and I live in the middle of California. It gets pretty hot here, especially during the summer, and I would bind it about every day. So I would like come home from school wearing, like long jeans, a t-shirt, and then this compression device underneath all that. And I would just walk home in like 115-degree weather.
Oh,
And you could see that over time that gets
hot. But they're
kind
also
of
they're also uncomfortable, right? I mean, because your breasts
yeah,
are
they're
being smushed.
yeah, some people get like back pain from them. I didn't find them to be too uncomfortable, but I actually it actually I used a brand that was supposedly safe to use, but binding it's not safe. The way it works, it pushes the breast into the rib cage, and because I didn't have that big of a chest. I was about maybe like a B cup, but to this day I still have my ribs are still deformed. They still flare out a little bit.
Wow. Wow. So you were
But
binding and then you had to go back and get like evaluated or permission to have the top surgery from your gender therapist? Is that how it worked for you?
yeah, so I expressed to my therapist that I wanted to get a mastectomy, and from there I was referred to another specialist, and then she then referred me to a gender affirming surgeon, as they call it. I don't know if that was his actual title, but
Mhm. Mhm.
they don't really have much in the way of a vetting process. Like there was no like psychological evaluation, or it was very just
Yeah. And you're 15.
not thorough at all. And I would say it was very short time
And
between getting the referral and actually going under the knife. It was about 6 months between the two for me.
wow. And you don't have to say where, but this was in the state of California
Yeah,
where
this
you
was
had the
in
surgery.
California.
And how are your parents and your older siblings at this point when they know you're deciding to have the top surgery? Did they think, oh no? Or were they still,
Yeah, I
this is what?
wasn't a lot of I didn't really have a lot of my siblings. All of my siblings actually were all moved out by this point. I didn't really have like a whole lot of contact with them. I mean, my sisters were supportive. I did One of my older brothers, though, I came to learn that he was concerned with this, and at the time I just kind of dismissed it as him like being ignorant or transphobic,
Yeah.
because but I now I'm pretty thankful that he tried to speak up, even if then he didn't really succeed in
Yeah.
dissuading me. But
Yeah, I can see how that would be important for you to know he did voice his concern. And your parents, were they just going along with it because they thought this is what you needed? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when at the start of my transition, actually, the the therapists and nurses and stuff would tell them stuff like transgender adolescents have a really high suicide rate, about upwards of 41%. If you don't affirm her, she might develop suicidal tendencies, or
Yeah. And
they basically gave them the whole, would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son?
and so the whole time you're moving forward, you know, you're on your hormones and you're meeting with the therapists and the surgeons and you're planning all this. Was there ever like a kind of just a little nagging seed of doubt, or were you just feel this is what I need, this will help me?
I was pretty confident in my transition then.
Yeah. And then when did you peak?
I would say that would be after the fact, after I
Yeah. So the first day you
transitioned.
woke up after surgery, did you look down at your chest and go, oh, I look great. This is perfect. This is just what I was
Well,
after.
I can see all of it because
Well,
it was
yeah.
all covered up by bandages.
Yeah.
But I was like,
I
it
don't
was
have to
kind of
bind
like, finally, I
anymore.
don't have to deal with all this stuff anymore.
Uh-huh.
But
And then once you healed
the
and you could see, were you pleased with the results?
yeah, I'm actually still in the healing process, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the early stages of the process were pretty difficult.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal stuff. It's no joke.
And
But
is it, you know, just pain wise, healing wise?
no,
No.
surprisingly, the physical pain from it wasn't too bad. It was like a very deep muscle soreness. But
Mhm.
I found that the meds they gave me, the opioids they gave me to treat the pain for it, actually caused me a lot more pain than the surgery itself. It gave me serious indigestion for about 2 days, so I had to go off of them.
Wow.
But
So
the aftercare process is just it's really difficult. I didn't want the way it looks in the first few months afterward is, I don't know if I really want to go into like the all the gory details, but
yeah, no, just more, you know,
it's
what you were
really
thinking and feeling kind of stuff. Yeah,
it made showering really difficult. It was
sure.
just horrible to look down at, and
Yeah.
you know, I had to like constantly like covered up with like bandages, and it also seriously limited my range of motion for a while. I couldn't even lift my arms above my head for a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't go out for a while. I couldn't like see my friends or anything.
And did you
So
have it done
it
during
was just
summer so
really,
you weren't missing school?
yeah, it was during summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And wow. And so none of the people that you had to see in order to actually have the top surgery, from doctors, therapists, anybody, raised any kind of, you're a little bit young, you sure you want to do this? Maybe you want to wait.
Nobody,
There's no sense of,
nobody.
yeah. So let's skip to then. Okay, so you've recovered now. You can put your arms up. You can, you know, you're not all bandaged up.
Oh, I still am actually, because I've had some regressions in the healing process, and I'm not
Wow.
really getting any help with it. I've reached out to my surgeon. I've like I have to constantly wear bandages, non-adhesive bandages, so that the grafts don't like stick to like my shirts and stuff while they're healing
Wow.
and
And
doing
how
God
old
knows
are
what's
you
happening to
now?
them. I'm 18.
So for
I was 15 when I underwent
three
this.
years you haven't healed.
2 years.
That
But
was,
yeah,
and then,
the impression they gave me was that the the grafts specifically would be healed by about 9 months to a year, and that just hasn't been happening.
okay.
I'm still dealing with this, and my surgeon has not helped me at all. He actually gave me advice that temporarily made my problem worse. So I just don't think I can rely on my healthcare provider anymore for any help with this.
Yeah. So you had the surgery at 15 and you're 18 now. So I'm trying to
Mhm.
understand why it's not been 3 years that you've been dealing post-op with problems.
Because I was 15, but I was a month afterward. I turned 16.
You're
So
almost 16. Got it. Got it. And you,
mhm.
if you want to explain why you had to have grafts versus just going in and removing the breasts.
Mhm. So not only did I get the breast tissue removed, they also so the most common way they do it, they not only like remove the breast tissue, but they on an area of the chest, they kind of like do like the way it was described to me was like it's kind of like scraping the knee, but in a more controlled fashion. And then they remove the nipple and then basically paste it onto that area that's been scraped.
So that's the
So
area.
it's pretty,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty brutal stuff.
And why do you think your surgeon won't respond in a manner that's acceptable? Just, I mean, I know you're guessing.
I really don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But it really felt like in my last few appointments with him, it was kind of it was difficult to get a hold of him for a while actually. But in my last few appointments with him, he seemed almost kind of nervous, like he's rushing me through the appointments, like he's not really addressing my concerns. And
Does he know you
I'm just wrong.
Does he know you've become quite outspoken? Do you think that might be? He's like, oh my God, she's on
That
the
may
media.
be it. I don't really know.
Yeah, she's on the media all the time.
I did tell him that I detransition. So
and what did he say?
he basically told me, well, you're the first of any patient you're the first patient I've had who is detransitioned.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of been, that's kind of what I've been told by my other like my specialist and therapist.
Yeah. Well, my understanding, there's a lot of detransitioners that just don't ever pick up the phone and call their doctor and say, hey, guess what?
Yeah,
it's
difficult too, because oftentimes you're just not going to get help for it.
Yeah, and you're in that
like your
position where you
hormones,
still need him.
Your replacement hormones aren't going to get covered because you're not trans any longer, and you're probably not going to get whatever treatments you need, including therapy. Because I mean, anything other than the affirmative care model now is considered conversion therapy.
Right.
So it goes against their practice to do that.
And what kind of medication do you take now as a detrans?
I don't take any, actually.
You don't?
I stopped taking testosterone, but luckily it seems that my body is able to produce its own hormones now.
This might seem like a personal question, but are you having periods, normal periods?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
I'm pretty lucky, actually. So I went cold turkey off of testosterone last May, and about 2 months later, I actually started on my period, and they've been fairly regular since, which is really interesting because when I first started taking the testosterone and the puberty blockers, I was so young that my periods hadn't even been regulated yet. I only had about maybe like 3 or 4 per year. So I think I'm
Did
pretty
they
lucky
offer
in that regard.
they offer you fertility preservation before you went on testosterone? Did they say you want to freeze and bank your eggs in case?
No, I think I would have been too young to do that legally. I was 13. But I remember the endocrinologist told me when she gave me like the forms and stuff, one of the first things she said to me was, "Are you aware that this may affect your ability to have children in the future?" I was 13. Of course I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how many times you tried to explain what that means to a kid that young, they're just not going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, even if you say, yeah, I'm aware, thank you very much, I don't think I want kids. But then by the time you're 25, you're in a whole different place in your life. Yeah. So then what happened to sort of wake you up? What was there an event that happened, or was there just a kind of, I'm not happy with being a boy or a man?
It was a few factors, actually. A few years in, I started to become disillusioned to like what it really means to be a boy or a man, especially like in the social sense, like all the responsibilities. And I would say pretty quickly post-op, actually, I started developing feelings of grief, which I couldn't identify at the time because I was just so deep in this. I had been affirmed so much, and I was afraid of being wrong. And I thought that there was really no going back because I had already been in it for so long. I mean, like, I started becoming very masculine looking. Even I passed very well at the time, and it wasn't really until I started taking a psychology class, maybe about 11 months later, that I really started to think about what this means, what it'll mean for me as an adult. Um, I had one lesson um, with the about it was about the Harlow experiments with the rhesus monkey infants. Are you familiar with this?
Mhm, mhm.
So for those of you who aren't, it's basically a study on monkey infants that it basically it's like a it's a study of the bond between infant and mother using it doesn't observe actual infant, no, actual rhesus monkey mothers, but it uses like surrogate mothers made of either cloth or wire. And since this was the first time that I was really thinking about like maternity, have like raising a kid, what that might mean, what that might look like. And one of the main themes of it was breastfeeding, actually, and like being physically comforted by a mother. And I realized that because of the decisions I've made at such a young age, I would be missing out on not only getting to breastfeed my children in the future, but also, I mean, if my fertility isn't intact anymore, then I might not be able to have that experience, the experience of raising children at all.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, but I worked in pediatric nursing for a long, long time. And that study was something we learned about when we were in school. And
Really?
it's, it is an important thing, how children and mothers bond is through the
Mhm.
act of breastfeeding. So you're in college and you're taking this class and it's kind of like,
No, no, I was in high school, actually. I was in
oh, it was a high
my
school
junior year.
class. Okay. Okay. And then you said it was a series of events. So that was kind of one of them.
That was the I think that was ultimately what led to me realizing that it was all a mistake and that I shouldn't be going on this path any longer.
Got it. Got it. So what were the other kind of events, if you want to talk about them, or not if it's private, that's fine too.
Um, that's kind of the gist of it, actually.
Yeah. So once that all happened, did you just say, I'm a woman, and is that when you went cold turkey and I went off testosterone and I started dressing more feminine
Yeah,
again?
I a few weeks after I completed that lesson, I kind of just broke down crying one night because I realized that I missed my breasts so much, and I I wanted to be pretty, and I just wanted to look like and just be a woman, and that there's so many things that I took away from myself, and I
Yeah.
realized the reality of things that no matter what I did to myself, I would always be a woman.
Yeah. And was your family supportive of you during that time?
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm just curious, do you think you'll have reconstructive surgery? Do you think the type of surgery that you had means that you won't be able to, I mean, some people have mastectomies for cancer or whatever, and they still can nurse their babies. But sometimes with mastectomies for trans surgery, they go so deep and remove so much. Do you know where you are on that kind of spectrum? If you had reconstructive surgery, would you be able to nurse a baby?
No, they because of what they did to my nipples, I will never be able to breastfeed, and no reconstructive surgery, unfortunately, can do anything about that.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in having any more surgeries on that area, because it would all just be cosmetic and no function would be restored. It might just take away function even further, honestly.
Yeah. So you're living at home, you're doing all this stuff. You find out that it's really not true and you really are a girl, and no matter what you do, you'll always be a woman. How did you how did you break into the sort of the national scene? You know, you've testified in our state's capital, you've done major media, you know, we're just in Washington, D.C. at a big press briefing. How did that happen? How did people find you, or how did you find them to get involved as sort of an activist educator?
So at first, actually, when I started expressing, like, I was regretting my transition, and that I wish to detransition, I actually got silenced. I got a lot of animosity from other transgender people, and
Was this online?
at first,
Silence?
yeah,
Like,
this was online, and I also lost all my friends in person. But I kind of just like gave in to their demands for a little bit, and then I realized this is all wrong. Like, why are, if these people are so secure in their transitions and they're being their real selves, then why is my experience, why does it have to be silenced?
and what were their demands? Just to shut up, or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they would tell me that exactly, to shut up.
yeah,
They would tell me that I was an awful person, and that I was the only one, and that I was a brat. I didn't deserve the testosterone or the mastectomy. And that is true. I didn't deserve that. I deserve better.
yeah.
And I came to realize that, and I realized that I'm not the only person in this situation.
Mhm.
Somebody, and just like reading about other people's experiences.
So in your
And
speaking out, you got silenced over here, but then that's how other people
yeah,
found
this was before I started using Twitter. This is well before I started using Twitter as
you.
a
Okay.
platform. Um,
Was this mostly then
but
on
just like
Instagram?
seeing other people's testimonies and knowing that I'm not the only one, I felt the need to speak out. And I started doing that. I made an account on Twitter earlier this year, actually. And at first I didn't really do a whole lot on it. I wasn't Originally, I was planning to just like have a personal account, but I realized that there's not a whole lot of people my age in my position who are speaking out, and somebody needs to do that. My voice is needed. And so I decided to start doing that. And since, I guess, my story has touched a lot of people, a lot of organizations, and it all started when the flying out and doing testimonies actually all started with a group called Partners for Ethical Care reaching out to me to testify on some bills. And it was, they weren't expecting me to actually do it, and I wasn't expecting, my parents to allow me to do it. So I I think it was a pretty lucky situation, and it's been going uphill from there.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm really glad that I'm able to do all of this.
And maybe you are on the inside really nervous, but you always seem incredibly poised and very articulate as you stand there with, the mobs around you, or in a senate, in a hearing, in a capitol. That's can be very intimidating.
It really is,
Yeah. What do you do to take
but
care of
it's
yourself though, so you don't go um crazy? I mean, because the social media hate, and how do and you put yourself out there to very vulnerable with your story. How do you keep your
yeah.
sanity?
I mean, I've already been through so much. I've already
Yeah.
been through some pretty crazy things, so a lot of it just doesn't really bother me a whole lot. But I tried to remind myself that I'm getting a lot more people in support of me than there
Absolutely.
are who, yeah.
Yeah. I checked your Twitter
Sometimes some
right before we went on. I checked your Twitter, and I mean, you've got tens of thousands of followers, so you've got an army
mhm,
behind you. Yeah. What
it
did
can
you
get kind
think?
of overwhelming at times, but
Oh,
I
sure.
mean,
But
It's nothing
you
I
do
couldn't
have to
handle.
take care of yourself, so you don't get burnt out, you don't get, what did you think of Governor Newsom when he signed the SB 107 into law the other day? How did that feel? Did it sting? Did it feel, I think
Yeah,
Aaron
I'm
Friday, I
not.
think, said it was a big middle finger.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised, but it's still very disappointing.
Yeah. But we have, just because the state allows it, we just do all of our education. We warn people so they don't want to trans themselves, or parents don't allow their children to trans or bring their children to California. So,
Mhm.
That's why I mean, I don't know, are you part of the Reddit detransition group?
I mean,
You,
I used to like check it every now and then, but I never really posted on it. It was more like, usually I would use like the chat server they had,
yeah. I only
but
bring it
I'm
up
not
because
really.
it's such a huge group now. It's like almost 40,000 people, or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
So there's this huge, like I say, this huge army of people that are pushing back on this agenda. Wow. So sometimes do you lay in bed at night and kind of go, what happened to my life? Or how do you know? I think
Yeah,
you've been to
it's a
Washington,
really.
D.C. I think you went to Florida. I know you've been to Sacramento. You've been all over, my husband came in one morning and he was reading the Epic Times. And he's like, oh, there's this girl, Chloe Cole. And I'm like, I know Chloe. So, I mean, you're just out there.
Yeah,
Is it surprising to you?
it's been a pretty big adjustment, actually. I used to be a pretty withdrawn person, so it's kind of it's like
Yeah.
I couldn't put into words just how crazy all this is to me.
Spoke at AAP one year, as when I was a pediatric nurse. So it's kind of mad at the pediatricians for kind of going off the rails. Who are your heroes? Like, who are, do you have other like detrans women that you look up to, or you've learned a lot, or, or not even detrans women? I mean, who has kind of been your North Star that's kind of kept you grounded? Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your parents. I don't know.
Yeah, my family, my extended family, and my older brother.
Yeah.
They've been really supportive of me with this, and
Like your rock.
I mean, yeah, it really means a lot to me. But I also have to thank some of the women in the trans subreddit, the ones who run the chat server, because they've helped me understand that I'm not the only one, that it gets better from here.
Yeah, that's great. Well, do you have any words of wisdom you want to leave people with, or if there's young girls out there listening to you that are confused, or do you have any sage advice as we close down our little chat here?
Yeah, I'll start with the parents, actually. Keep your kids off social media. Keep them off of technology for as long as you can, and once they're old enough to use it, keep track of what they're doing, how much time they're spending on there. Keep them busy with like extracurricular activities, and spend time with them. Let them know that they're loved, and spend quality time with them. But as for the kids who are involved with this, I would say don't surround yourself with a bubble of people who also the same things and affirm you.
Yeah.
Remember to, even if it's not what you want to hear, remember to listen to people outside of your bubble. Even if they don't say what you want to hear, it might just be what you need to hear.
Yeah, that's good advice. Well, thank you for chatting with me. I appreciate it. I've been wanting to meet you as much as technology allows us to meet. But
yeah, thank you for interviewing me.
You're one of my heroes. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.